Let me ask you something honest. How much of your time this week did you spend on decisions your team should be capable of making? Be honest. Because here's what I found working with scaling companies. The average CEO of a $10 million plus company spends nearly 60% of their time on decisions their team should be capable of making. 60%. If you make $500,000 a year, you are paying a $300,000 penalty for a culture that doesn't think. I call this the Bottleneck Tax, and you're probably paying it right now without even realizing it. Let's talk about what it actually looks like in your business. Your team is waiting on you, not because they're lazy. They're waiting because every important decision eventually lands on your desk. You have become the chief problem solver. And here's the brutal truth. You train them to do this. Here's what a typical week looks like for most of the leaders I work with. Monday morning, you arrive with 3 strategic priorities for the week. By 9:30 a.m., you're already responding to urgent issues. By noon, those priorities are buried under fires that demand immediate attention. Wednesday afternoon, a team member brings you a problem. You solve it on the spot. 5 minutes. Feels efficient. But 3 days later, the same problem appears with a different person. You solve it again. A week later, it's back. You've now spent 30 minutes on a problem that keeps recurring because you never paused to find the root cause. Friday evening, you review your week. You accomplished a lot. Hundreds of emails answered. Back-to-back meetings attended. Dozens of problems solved. But you cannot identify a single strategic move you made. Those 3 priorities from Monday morning? Still on the list for next week. Sound familiar? This is not a time management problem. It is not a delegation problem. And it is definitely not a discipline problem. This is a thinking problem. And the cost of it is far higher than most leaders realize. I see it show up in 5 specific and compounding ways. First, the addition spiral. When you don't think strategically, you solve problems by adding more. More people, more meetings, more systems, more process. I worked with a client whose company grew from 25 to 75 employees in 3 years. Revenue tripled. Sounds like success, except profit per employee dropped 40%. He had added his way into lower profitability. The growth looked right on the surface. The thinking underneath it was reactive, not strategic. Second, the symptom loop. Every time you solve a symptom instead of a source, you teach your organization that symptoms are normal. I had a client with 8 failed hires in 2 years. He was blaming the job market, the candidate pool, bad luck. The real problem was that his interview process tested presentation skills instead of actual job capabilities. 3 hours of real thinking fixed a problem that had been costing him for 2 years. The symptom kept on recurring because no one had stopped to find the source. Third, thinking debt. Strategic thinking gets pushed to when things calm down. But here is the problem. Things never calm down because failing to think strategically is precisely what creates the fires keeping you busy in the first place. Every reactive decision you make generates an average of 3 to 5 follow-up decisions that land back on your desk. You are not clearing your plate. You are refilling it. Fourth, innovation blindness. When you are looking at the fire at your feet, you cannot see the horizon. You miss market shifts. You miss competitor moves. You miss the ideas your own team is sitting on because no one has created the space to surface them. The opportunity cost of being perpetually reactive is invisible until a competitor captures the ground you were too busy to claim. Fifth, team dependency. This is the most expensive pattern of all and the hardest to see. Every time you solve a problem for your team, you train them that solving problems is your job, not theirs. You think you are being helpful, being a good leader, keeping things moving. What you are actually doing is building a team that can execute but cannot think. And a team that cannot think without you is a team that cannot function without you, which means you can never step back, never scale, Never lead at the level your organization actually needs. Here is what most leaders miss. These 5 costs do not operate independently. They compound. Team dependency drives you to solve more problems reactively. That accelerates the addition spiral. The addition spiral creates complexity. Complexity generates more symptom loops. More symptom loops produce more thinking debt. And thinking debt keeps you so buried in the present that innovation blindness becomes permanent. It is a vicious cycle, and it tightens over time. But here is what I need you to hear. It works in reverse, too. When you interrupt one part of the cycle, the whole system begins to shift. When your team develops the thinking skills to solve problems at the source, the volume of decisions reaching your desk drops. When that volume drops, you recover time for strategic work. When you do strategic work, you reduce the fires. When fires reduce, your team has space to think even more clearly. The cycle reverses. I have watched this transformation happen in organizations across industries and at every stage of growth. The shift is not about working harder. It is not about hiring better people. It is about changing the quality of thinking inside the organization. Starting with the questions leaders ask and the framework they give their teams to think within. Because here is the truth about the bottleneck tax. You are not paying it because you are not smart enough, not working hard enough, or not committed enough. You are paying it because you have become the best firefighter in your company. And firefighting is a full-time job that leaves no time for architecture. The highest form of leadership is not being the smartest person in the room. It is building a room full of people who know how to think. People who can question assumptions, identify root causes, evaluate options, and make sound decisions without waiting for you to weigh in. When that becomes the culture of your organization, everything changes. Decisions improve. Meetings shift from status updates to genuine strategic conversation. Problems get solved where they happen rather than where they escalate. And you finally have the capacity to work on what only you can do. That is what Think First is built to create. Reserve your copy at deliberatedirections.com/thinkfirst.